wanted to do a top
but a brand new month, and so we really appreciate your time. I'm your host, Anita Blanton, and I'll be with you through 4 p.m. So let's talk a little bit about where we're going in this first hour that we have together with our conversations. We're going to be talking with our own Casey Cronus about a class action lawsuit that's actually being brought here in our state. You know, there was a big cannabis conference that was happening here in our area. I believe this was last week, and advocates that were down in Springfield. Of course, Springfield was very busy over this weekend and really into this morning with a lot of things that were kind of coming about at the last minute of the spring legislative session. But Casey Cronus is going to talk to us about this lawsuit filed here in Illinois, taking aim at cannabis companies for not warning of mental health risks. You know, often we hear about mental health benefits, and so that's a part of what they say is the problem, is that maybe the risks and the benefits aren't being discussed at the full scale. So we're going to talk to her about where she's going with this report that she's working on for today. It's a 320-page lawsuit that was filed today. So we're going to get into that, not all 320 pages, but we'll give you an overview coming up around 1:45. I believe she's going to come up here in studio and talk to me about that. You know, there's been so much discussion about prices for just about everything going up over the last few years, and mainly we talk about gas. Well, we talk about groceries too, but affordability, this issue of affordability and how people are trying to juggle different things, how to pay for different things, how to make life work as costs just continue to skyrocket. Well, interestingly enough, tomatoes, of all things, have now become like a symbol of America's affordability squeeze. And we have an economist who's going to be coming on the show to talk to me a little bit about how that's so, and what are the prices that we're seeing now, and are there any changes in store? You know, I mean, could it be on the Christmas wish list, or could we get something before then? We shall see. You know, if we're waiting on the war in Iran, which obviously factors into some of what we're seeing over the last few months here, you know, just this weekend. You know, going into the weekend right here on Chicago Live on Friday when we were closing things out, I remember saying that President Trump had just sent out a message at that time, right around 4 p.m. on Friday, that he was going into the Situation Room and he was hoping that there would be some type of a major decision that was made. And here we are on Monday, and you would have thought on Friday maybe we would be saying here today that the ceasefire was solidified, maybe a little bit more, or that a deal had been struck, and it's quite the opposite. We've seen fire start back up, exchanges start back up between the nations. Israel is even factored into that now when it comes to Lebanon. And so there are great questions as to what's going to happen when it comes to the war in Iran moving forward. Here in our state, though, another big change that starts today really is NETA. The NETA Act, it has advanced. Today it goes into another phase, and this really takes things to a new level for transit riders in the state. It's public safety, service improvements that are supposed to come along with this. That's CTA, Metra, PACE, all with an authoritative body over them. And so we're going, it's not RTA anymore, now transitions into NETA over the next 60 days starting today. And so we'll be talking with the executive director for RTA, who's going to kind of give us the breakdown of how this works moving forward. But we're starting here in I don't want to say familiar territory, but on a case that so many people have followed for so long. And so if it's familiar because the Lane Bryant murder case has captivated minds for decades now, as people have wondered what happened in that store that day, and why is it that in 2026 we still don't have somebody who is behind bars for the heinous murders of those women. And now we have investigative journalist Delia D'Ambra, who has a podcast called Counterclock, looking back into that 2008 tragedy and bringing up some new questions and a new way of thinking about this. And she's joining me now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to chatting.
I think the big question you raise here is, could this have been solved by today? And your answer would be?
I think there's a high probability that it can be solved. It is sort of wild to think that this many years have gone by and it has been unresolved. But I think there are a variety of factors that play into that. Resources, technology that wasn't available back at the time, a different way of viewing the evidence and information we know of in the crime and that law enforcement has in the crime. So I definitely think there is a very high probability this case is solvable if all the right things can be implemented.
When you say all the right things can be implemented, what do you think wasn't implemented before that's available now?
I think, if law enforcement, as they've said, Tinley Park Police Department has said they have DNA from some kind of evidence in these homicides. And I think some of the genetic genealogy type testing and research that can be done on DNA samples now, now in 2026, it's even advanced from where it was in 2022 and 2023, depending on the accredited labs that could be utilized by law enforcement. And so really looking at that path, I think could be a viable avenue of investigation for this case, and I hope that law enforcement is able to consider it as they look at the case now.
Yeah, it is really interesting where we are with technology, especially DNA, forensic technology at this point in time in society, as we are seeing in many cases that they do get reopened, and it's just something small that with new technology that leads to major breakthroughs. Hadn't happened here yet, but do you get the sense maybe we're not too far from that?
Yeah, I mean, I know from the conversations that I have had with Chief Tilton from Tinley Park Police Department that, he told me, verbatim, this was last year, we will have a story to tell soon. And that, is an indication to me. I can't know exactly how to define that, but that would be, an indication to me that the police department has at least, been open to the possibility of exploring things that they hadn't been able to look at or use as a resource in the past. Because from, again, my conversations with them and conversations with others that are close to the case, they've not given up on this case. I would not venture to say that they are not working this case. I think that they very much are, and I think they're trying to do it with the tools and resources that are available now. And I would hope that it would be something like genetic genealogy and advancements in technology and DNA testing.
So this is season 8 for you with Counterclock. If someone is just hearing about this podcast, tell us a little bit about it and how this particular case factors into what you've been able to do in other seasons.
Yeah, so Counterclock is a podcast that is an investigative, really docu-series, for lack of a better term. And yeah, as you said, this is the 8th season. Every case that I've covered has looked different. Some of the cases have involved wrongful conviction elements, obviously unsolved crimes where I can utilize my skills as an investigative journalist. And, the Lane Bryant case, came on my radar because Ashley Flowers, who is the founder of AudioChuck, the Crime Junkie team, which is a large weekly podcast, initially was going to begin looking into it. And there was some posts that went out from Ashley's TikTok and just sort of a request, a call to action for people to write in if they felt they knew anything important. And so some of the tips and information that were developed from that call out really made the team internally go, hey, we think, putting a investigative journalist who does this full time and can really do in-depth research and investigative work on this would be best for covering the case and doing it the right way. And so here we are, over a year later, coming up on a year and a half. And, I feel like the work has been very solid in the information that's put out there and the way that it's put out there in the 8 episodes. Hopefully we'll have a very positive impact.
Take me back to when you first found out about the murders of these women in the Lane Bryant store, what you were doing and what your feelings were then.
My feelings when I learned about it was, my goodness, this could have been anyone, could have been any of us. And I've said, to other journalists, I'm a one of all sisters. And so, I'm the age that some of these victims were at the time. They all came from different walks in life. And so I just saw a lot of reflection of, various communities, all sorts of things that I just felt like, man, that is sort of at the heart of this, right? This really could have been any woman that walked into a retail store. You're shopping on a Saturday morning. I mean, I do that all the time. My sisters do that all the time. And so there was just this sort of closeness and realness that was just so tangible to me that's why I was really drawn to it and felt like, okay, first stop, law enforcement, what kind of cooperation can we get there? Family members, people with information and insight, new avenues that maybe are worth exploring. So it was quite a process.
Have you talked more with the families?
I have. I've talked with some family members who have never spoken publicly. I was actually just exchanging emails today with Michelle Talos, Jennifer Bishop's sister, who has listened to all 8 episodes, and just her gratitude and, doing follow-up interviews with her and other family members as well, even extended folks who were significant others, widowers, siblings. It's just so broad when you have 6 victims, 1 survivor, 5 deceased. It's a lot. It's a lot of people, and it's a lot of travel, and it's a lot of finding folks and really making the effort.
What is the sentiment that you get from them today?
A lot of them, I think they want answers. Obviously, they want some closure, first and foremost. But I also think that they still have a lot of questions of their own, and they're constantly on this journey of finding new information and trying to process that while also honoring the legacies and lives of those that they lost. So I don't get a sense from those that I've gotten to know and talked with in depth that they are, mad or angered by the fact that, anything that law enforcement has done or hasn't done. But I definitely get the sense that they have questions as to, well, what more could be done, right? Like, how can we get closer to resolution? And so I feel as if they're, they're very much like me, where they want to know answers in the pursuit of the truth, whatever that looks like.
Whatever it looks like, yeah. What do you think draws people to true crime podcasts? Is it that sense that this could have been anyone, that, that they could be a part of something that opens up a new avenue of investigation? What do you think it is about? Because true crime really does get people invested.
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of people, some folks, they want to understand something that is sort of shocking and jarring, right? To maybe learn from it, right? Or change how they, move through the world. So I think there's some people that are really drawn to it for that reason. I think others, again, maybe they see themselves in the victims and victimology of the crime. Some folks, they, are coming from prior law enforcement, right? Or in the legal world. And so I think there's, everybody comes to it, but for a different reason. But I think what's so important about these longer form investigative type works like Counterclock is that, you're really hearing from real people who were either very close to the investigation of this crime, the victims. You're hearing archive audio. And I think that really gets people invested because you're allowing the audience and the consumer to not have sort of a time clock on how much they're able to get. Like, they're able to hear people's full statements, right? Like, they're able to understand the full context of the story. And so I think that allows people to really get invested and ideally engage in the call to actions that we put out, which is a really big one for this season because this happened in 2008. And so, there are a lot of people, I believe, that are around, that were alive and around then, that could be important, may know things that they've never shared. And so sometimes that can be a challenge when you've got cases from like the 70s and 80s and even some degrees to the 90s, where time can become a bit of an enemy. But in other ways, I say that time can also be an asset, because sometimes with 18 years passing, maybe there's finally someone who feels like they can loosen, their lips a little bit. And so it's sort of interesting thing how time passing can be a positive and a negative, just depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I could talk to you all day about this. Again, I mean, so many people have followed it for so long and just had so many questions along the way. Thank you for what you're doing, keeping this story alive. Where can we find Counterclock?
Counterclock, season 8 and all prior seasons, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. So Spotify, Apple. If you want to listen ad free, you can listen on the Crime Junkie app in the Crime Junkie fan club.
Great speaking with you today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. 1:15. Let's get in a 2-minute break, everyone, and we're going to move our conversations on to transit riders in our state. So many who depend on our public transit throughout the state, and there are some big changes that are happening starting today. All right, everybody, it's about 1:18 right now. And NITA, or the Northern Illinois Transit Authority Act, was created with this vision of transformation for public transit in our state. You know, whether it's riding throughout Chicago or, again, anywhere else in Illinois. There was a lot of back and forth to get this through the legislature, and now, starting today, the transformation begins. I want to bring in Leanne Redden, the Executive Director for the RTA, to talk a little bit about where we stand today and where we're going from here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so June 1st is the beginning of NITA, but I'd like you to maybe take us back before we move forward here as to how we got here. What was the purpose and the conversation to get here?
It's really been years of conversation around the lack of funding for public transportation in our region. And riders may recall this time last year, 18 months ago, we began a really concerted effort ourselves with the 3 transit operators, CTA, Metro, and PACE, advocates across the region, elected officials, talking about the fiscal cliff that was going to be facing us and the potential catastrophic service cuts that could be faced facing riders in our region if we didn't have sufficient funding to support the public transportation system. We are fortunate in this region to have one of the most robust transit systems in this country, and sort of this looming fiscal crisis of not having enough funding to actually operate the system really was looming very large, a very real crisis that would affect riders, frontline workers across our region. And so we really were working in earnest more, for the past couple of years to raise awareness around that, help legislators and others understand what the impacts were going to be. And then we got to November last year where the legislature came together and approved the NEDA Act, which is the Northern Illinois Transit Authority Act, which goes into effect today, June 1st.
There was pushback along the way, if I recall, from like downstate leaders and even some suburban leaders. How did their critiques lead to what we have now?
So I think there was a concerted effort to work across the entire state, not just up in northeastern Illinois. So some of the conversations that sort of transpired were around supporting and funding public transportation, Champaign-Urbana, the Quad Cities, Peoria, etc., and sort of thinking about it as not just a sort of a Chicago metro area issue, but how it impacts public transportation across the entire state. So I think what came together was a comprehensive bill that addressed both the Northern Illinois transit system needs as well as some of the downstate services that exist.
And what do those needs look like moving forward?
Well, I think just to speak to the northeastern Illinois region, really what everybody was expecting: cleaner, safer, more reliable, more frequent service across our entire region, to really better provide access to mobility and opportunities for our riders, support the region's economy. And that's really what we're going to get from this bill. The law goes into effect today. We're going to see the next several months through September 1st when the new board members are seated with not just the transitioning RTA to NEDA, but with the three service boards, CTA, Metro, and PACE as well. So we are sort of laser focused right now on doing all that work to set up NEDA for success, so that the riders really, those customer and rider focused improvements can start to roll out. They're going to start rolling out this summer. We have already allocated funding to each of the three service boards to provide additional services immediately. And you'll start to see them coming out over this summer across all 6 county regions. And there will be, more monies as additional, as the act goes further into effect into next year in our next budget cycle for beginning calendar year 27. You'll see even more service improvements and expansions.
And how will your role shift? Because even as we're getting ready to talk to you today, we're like, okay, well, is she NEDA or is she RTA? But you are RTA, so how does your role shift as now this board is put together with the next 60 days or so?
So the RTA still exists, and the RTA will become NEDA on September 1st when their board transitions to the NEDA board, with new board appointments being made across all 4 agencies, so across the regional entity as well as CTA, Metro, and PACE. Over the coming months, like I said, we are laser focused on getting the money out on the street and the services that the riders are demanding, looking to just even in these coming months, $132 million of infusion into the system beginning this right now, June 1st. You'll start to see expanded services across 10 CTA routes in our region, expansion and additional weekday and weekend service on Metro, on the Rock Island and the Metro Electric. We'll see expanded service on more than a dozen PACE routes in some of their higher capacity corridors, a lot of it focused on expanded service on weekends. You're going to start seeing, and you actually already have started seeing, but some additional security personnel as we're providing additional funding for manpower resources across the service boards in our region. additional capital and construction work focused on slow zone and elimination. And then we're looking to expand some programs that, for example, provide lower fares to low income riders across our region. So anyone who's SNAP eligible, looking to expand that program to all residents of our region across CTA, Metra, and PACE. It was originally a pilot with just Metra, and we're going to be expanding that across CTA and PACE. And that's just, as I noted at the beginning, that you're going to see between sort of now and September. And so we are all laser focused on delivering those services.
You mentioned safety, and of course that has been a big topic of conversation when it comes to public transit in and around Chicago over the last several months. Would you say that this was already a focus of where you all were going with NETA before the Trump administration kind of pushed for more security on public transit in and around Chicago, or is it or did you have to revisit that conversation even after the Trump administration kind of got involved?
This region has been laser focused, has always been focused on safety and security. I think what the NETA Act, and certainly we have been focused on this sort of ever since coming out of the pandemic as well, as ridership is coming back across the system. What the NETA bill allows us to do is have the funding and the resources, as well as the authority to come in and actually allocate more resources across the key corridors in our area to provide more safety and security services. We are staffing up with more police and security personnel across our operators, as well as doing some pre-work and setup for establishing an ambassador program across the entire region as well.
And where does the funding come from?
So the lion's share, so the state is actually contributing funding towards the transit services, as well as the region, as we have for the past 50 years. There is an RTA, or region-wide sales tax, that is levied across the 6-county region to support public transportation, and those dollars will be going directly, raising that amount is going directly to providing these services across the region.
Mm-hmm. And so, broad overview, why couldn't these things be done without NETA?
Well, I think the key thing was the funding needs were pretty extreme. We had been kept afloat, if you will, with the COVID relief monies that the federal government had provided us, and that allowed us to kind of fill that sort of structural budgetary gap that was existing within all our operations. The NETA bill is providing that additional funding infusion into the transit system to allow these investments of both on the operations side and service expansions across the region. So the bill passing provides that funding stability. The bill also, though, does provide some transformative policy direction with better coordination of services to provide sort of safer, more frequent and regionally coordinated services across the region. And so I think some of the policy changes in that law are also going to be a strong underpinning for a stronger, more reliable, more flexible public transportation system for the 6-county region.
And just on a final note, you mentioned stability. So how will this work in terms of the funding moving forward? I mean, it's put together for what, 2026, 2027? What will happen after that?
Well, the legislature stands, and then the funding streams stand going forward in perpetuity. So the sales tax will continue to come in and continue to support. It has been growing, so that's an even a stronger indication for us that we have that stability going forward. This bill is transformational, both in terms of the amount of funding, excuse me, the amount of funding and the governance improvements for the region that are really going to provide that strength and stability focus, so we can provide the services that this region, the riders and the residents of this region deserve.
Well, they've certainly been waiting on them. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That was Leanne Redden, again, the executive director for RTA. It's a big day for public transit in our state. It's 1:30, everyone, so give us 2 minutes and we'll get into our conversations. She mentioned the fact that they worked in some ways to try to make sure there are some lower ride fares for people, especially if they're SNAP eligible. We're going to get into the cost of groceries that have so many people kind of trying to figure out how to make things work throughout the week in their homes when we come back. 2 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. 1:32 right now, and if you've gone to the grocery store lately, your tally for things that you've gotten on a regular basis, if you looked at the bill for this week, last week, versus those same things from, let's say, 5 years ago, would look pretty drastically different. And one indicator of this affordability issue for so many people in this country right now appears to be the price of tomatoes. I have Usha Haley, an economist from Wichita State University, who's joining me now to kind of break things down in terms of where we are, what's factoring into all of this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me on, Perry.
It's Anita. Perry's my producer who booked you. But let's talk a little bit about it happens. Let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing and how tomatoes factor into this issue of affordability.
Well, tomatoes are a staple. Everybody uses them in all kinds of foods, pasta, pizza, different kinds of sauces. And so it's a staple. And they've gone up more in price than any other product, more than beef, more than seafood. I think slightly less than energy, but it's pretty significant for an American consumer. 40% increase in prices year on year.
That is wild. And I mean, is it the costs that our farmers are having to absorb that leads to that, or is it something else?
Well, it's kind of a perfect storm. There are very many forces operating on it. So one of them, of course, is the tariffs, 17% tariffs on Mexico. Mexico is also, there's a structural reason for this. Mexico is also the largest supplier of tomatoes to the United States. The United States imports about 90% of its tomatoes from Mexico. The third reason is the weather. Within the United States, Florida is the largest grower of tomatoes, but it's been hit by um, freezes and bad weather in various storms that have affected the domestic crop. And then finally, the Iran conflict. So Iran, the price of diesel has shot up, and that has increased the price of transportation as well as the price of fertilizer for farmers. So all of this is combined, as I said, the perfect storm to increase the price of tomatoes and finally hit consumers.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I was thinking, that the war in Iran, the conflict there, has to be a part of this.
Yeah.
I wonder when it comes to tomatoes, how immediately reflective they are of change. So, on Friday, I said earlier that Friday it seemed like President Trump said, "I'm going in the Situation Room to." There may be a major decision that's made, and I'm paraphrasing him, but, I'm going in the Situation Room, there may be a major decision that's made. Are the prices of tomatoes similar to like the market, where it seems like when he does put out a statement that forebodes possibly something positive happening, that you do see a shift to the positive territory versus the conflict itself kind of being a drag on many things?
Well, not really, because agricultural produce is kind of different. There is a longer lead production time. You can't just say, hey, I want a tomato, and it pops out of the ground. So we don't really have alternative sources currently, domestically or even internationally, to take over the surplus, to take over the problem that we have of a tomato deficit. People want tomatoes. I mean, I use them all the time. I'm pretty sure others do as well, in sandwiches and, as I said, other kinds of foods, and they're not available. There are substitutes and alternatives, but it seems like stepping down, doesn't it?
Yeah. So then the flip side, I guess I would ask you, let's say there is some sustained, beyond ceasefire, there is a sustained deal. How long do you think it would be before we would see changes in these prices?
Not for a few months. I would say maybe around November, December. Perhaps other tomato crops may come up. As I said, in between, we may want to look at other things such as canned tomatoes, processed tomatoes, or just substitutes like, red peppers, roasted red peppers, other produce like that. These things take some time to ripple through the food system. And the prices have been rising, but retailers have been absorbing them. Currently, they can't anymore because prices are rising on all fronts.
Yeah, and I guess that if the issue were tariffs alone, I would think this could work in American farmers' favor. But
Yeah.
because it's a multi-pronged type of situation, really,
Right.
they're not reaping any benefits from this either.
See, here's the rub. When you start pulling at one policy lever, others get affected as well. So we're not really operating in a vacuum. I would say more like things ricocheting all over the place. And that's what's happening here. There were several things that burgeoned at the same time. And that has affected the price of an American staple, tomatoes.
Yeah. And it's tomatoes at the same time, and maybe the largest, as you said, but it is all of the other things that add up
Yes, it is.
for the American consumer.
Yes, it is. So the food we eat at home has increased in price by about 17 to 20% from last year. But tomatoes have increased in price by 40%. So it's indicative of what's going on in American kitchens.
Wow. And so when you are thinking about the economy today, what are some positives that you could see from where we are, or thus far ahead that you could see, going into the next quarter of the year? Like, are there any positives that we could
Well,
glean?
Even if there is a resolution to the conflict in Iran tomorrow, the price of diesel is not going to go down, nor is the price of fertilizer going to go down for American farmers, because these things take a while to trickle through the supply chain. So but there might be some alternate sources coming up within the US, not likely within the next couple months, but perhaps towards the end of summer. Um, I I think the best we can hope for is a resolution and some sort of price stabilization, maybe towards the end of the year.
Hmm. Um, do you think, being an economist, do you think that the
I'm
change?
actually an international business theorist, so
Okay, I have economists here, so I'm going with what I see.
okay.
But so let me ask you, from your purview, from your area of expertise, do you think that even shifts, let's say, from the top of the Fed, do you think that that will change where we go from here in the latter portion of the year? We've changed the page to a brand new month, so I'm just like saying, if we're looking ahead, what things kind of give you indicators that we could see maybe some shifts?
Well, it's not going to be a trade deal with Mexico. That trade deal had been in effect for like 30 years or so, and 17% tariffs on Mexico have raised the price of our imports. It's probably, even if there's a resolution to the Iran conflict, it's not going to affect us for a few months. Diesel will continue to be expensive and fertilizer also. But I do think there might be alternate sources arising within the United States. And then there is always the option of moving to, say, canned goods or something similar, a substitute. I do think prices will eventually fall, but not within the short term and not within the medium term.
Well, it's a very interesting struggle that so many people are dealing with, and in an election year at that, you just
Yep.
have to wonder what the effect of what people actually feel in their pockets, be it groceries or other things, the gas pump, what kind of effect that will have. And
Well,
go ahead.
the price of coffee, for example, the price of seafood, the price of beef, all of these have gone up, but none as much as tomatoes.
Very interesting.
So it's a headline story.
It's very interesting. I don't think most people would even think that, but here we are. Thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having me on.
Take care. All
Take
right,
care.
everyone. It's coming up on 1:43 here. We are going to have Casey Cronus join us shortly so that we can talk a little bit about risks, benefits when it comes to cannabis and maybe the marketing of cannabis products here in our state. There is a lawsuit that's just been filed. It's a pretty lengthy document, but she's been poring over it, and we're going to talk about where things go from here. I mean, this isn't just for our state. Other states like Arizona, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Rhode Island, Virginia have all kind of been looking into the same thing and joining in, saying we've got red flags. There's some issues here. So give us 2 minutes and we're back. Welcome back. 1:45 right now. Casey Cronus is joining us to talk about the story that she's working on for today. We had a major cannabis summit that was happening in our state. I believe that was last week, and so it's really interesting that now this week we have this huge lawsuit that was just filed.
That's right. And this lawsuit was filed a few weeks ago, but it is just now kind of coming into light here. We are figuring out what this lawsuit has in store. I interviewed the attorney who filed this federal class action suit. The lawsuit itself is 320 pages, and it sues 3 Illinois-based cannabis companies: Cresco Labs, Green Thumb Industries, and Verano Holdings. Now, this lawsuit essentially claims that these 3 manufacturers misled customers by failing to notify them of potential mental and physical health side effects from using cannabis. And again, these are all allegations. This is a class action suit that was really just filed a few weeks back. So we are digging into it today. I interviewed the attorney that is representing these plaintiffs. There are a few dozen plaintiffs from about a dozen states. And really what this draws is a connection between the cannabis industry and big tobacco. The attorney, Patrick Keneally, who is representing these plaintiffs, says that this is kind of like tobacco back in the 50s and 60s when people didn't really know all of the effects that taking it had. And he says that at the end of the day, he hopes that what comes from this lawsuit is better labeling, more specific labeling, and labeling that really tells consumers what could happen if using these products.
Okay, so what are the types of issues that the plaintiffs have experienced?
So what the attorney said, how he explained it, is it's not necessarily what these plaintiffs experienced. It is to protect future consumers who might have side effects that they don't know about. For example, these cannabis companies allegedly, he says, are marketing products to treat seizures, anxiety, depression. But what he says is that there are actually reverse effects that could happen in some cases, that people's mental and physical health actually deteriorates. Again, these are all claims, these are all allegations in this suit. And really what he hopes to see is better product labeling. He says that right now, the allegations in this suit claim that these cannabis companies are mislabeling and misleading, mismarketing customers. And he says that there is a lot of money that's been spent, that these customers wouldn't necessarily have paid as much had they been fully aware of the risks.
Interesting that they wouldn't have paid as much versus
Correct.
They wouldn't have paid for it at all.
Correct. Yeah, it's really very interesting. And when you think about, back in the day when there weren't as many labels, there wasn't that Surgeon General warning on tobacco products. That is something that he wants to see on cannabis products. Now, I reached out to all 3 companies that are being named in this suit. I only heard back from one of them. I'm going to go ahead, if we have time,
Yeah.
Anita, I'm going to read that statement. So this was from Verano Holdings. Again, all 3 of these companies are based in Illinois, based in Chicago, actually. They're headquartered here. So Verano Holdings writes to me, this lawsuit is part of a broader litigation campaign that Plaintiffs' Counsel has brought against several multi-state cannabis operators and mirrors claims that have been rejected by courts in similar legal actions against multi-state operators in the industry earlier this year. Verano operates in compliance with applicable state laws and regulations, including the detailed product labeling, testing, and warning requirements dictated by each state in which Verano is licensed. The medical use and benefits of cannabis have also been recognized by the states themselves, as reflected in the comprehensive medical marijuana programs that state legislatures and regulators have established and overseen for years. We strongly disagree with the allegations and intend to defend the matter vigorously. So that, of course, is the other side to this, is that these cannabis companies are saying that they are operating in compliance with the laws in their states, and that right now, Anita, there just aren't as strict of rules when it comes to labeling cannabis as there are for now tobacco products. And really, this attorney that I interviewed, he wants to see stronger labeling, stronger warnings on these products.
Really interesting, especially when you draw that connection with tobacco products. I just watched a documentary on like the beginning of tobacco products.
Oh, wow.
And it's fascinating. The minute, the differences between legalities versus ethical limits for companies that persisted for so long as to, I can do this one little thing and like ethically it might be a little but legally it gets me across. Very interesting, especially when it comes to marketing toward young people who become addicted then for life. When it comes to cannabis products, I think another one of the interesting things here, and this is why I brought up the summit that happened here last week, is the fact that there is so much conversation about positive mental and even physical benefits. That are they saying that the risks outweigh the benefits, or that the benefits are really being exaggerated?
So they're essentially saying that there are risks and that those risks are not being clearly they are not clearly informing consumers of those risks. Because as you mentioned, there are many groups, many studies that believe there are benefits to cannabis when it comes to certain mental and physical ailments and conditions. So this is a really tricky situation here, and it is a very layered situation. I asked the attorney how long he thinks this could play out. He said it could be years of legal court cases, of court dates. So this is not something that we will see an end to in the next couple of months, possibly even year.
And are we thinking that this is, and in what you've read or seen, is this a partisan issue, or does it have some like bipartisan support in terms of the thinking here?
I did pull a couple of information descriptions from certain websites. So, for example, the American Medical Association, I'll read this here. It says they believe cannabis is a dangerous drug and serious public health concern. They feel that more effective studies and clinical trials are necessary. The American Psychiatric Association also maintains an official stance. It says, quote, that there is insufficient evidence to support cannabis as an effective treatment. So I think, the umbrella issue here is that no matter what side of the aisle you are on, there is somewhat of an agreement that more studies are needed to really determine yes or no, is cannabis medically proven to help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be very clear on the types of issues that could come with marijuana use. I'm just seeing here, and what I have in front of me, that there is some research that's being cited here in the lawsuit about marijuana use causing and exacerbating development of schizophrenia, psychosis, bipolar disorder, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety. You don't really hear as much about those things, and especially maybe the more severe of those things.
And this will be really interesting to see in the next several years, say 5 to 10 years. Do we see labeling on cannabis products changing? And do we maybe see a more uniformed approach to how those products are labeled from state to state? Because you could walk into a dispensary in Illinois and products are labeled differently than maybe they are in Michigan, for example. So it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. And as you know, Anita, a couple of weeks ago, a story that I did about Kratom, it aired, and we dove into that. And that's kind of the next product that people are looking at and that lawmakers are really examining as to, should this be legal? Should there be restrictions, maybe age restrictions? What about labeling? Because right now you can purchase Kratom at, certain shops in the city and suburbs, and certain municipalities have banned it, but it is not banned across the board. So there are so many nuances to this. Kratom, we want to be clear, is not pertaining to this lawsuit, but we have to draw those comparisons because it's all sort of under this same umbrella.
Yeah, of regulation chasing the popularity that's already out there.
Yep. Right.
And again, going back into their comparisons to, tobacco products, you think about the fact that, again, the regulation came, they're still out there. People can still make the decision on their own to use if they want and do.
Yes. And this lawsuit is not about, getting cannabis off the market, stopping the sale of the medical use of marijuana, but it really is this attorney tells us, in hopes to better label and to hold manufacturers accountable who don't properly label their products.
And he said that this could take years.
This lawsuit itself could take years. So think about if there are, if there is legislation perhaps to move through some of these labeling restrictions and regulations, that could take even longer.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, sounds like we have some follow-up conversations down the road.
Sounds good, Anita. And we will have this story on a sneak peek at 4, and then we will be on with it at 5, again at 9. And it is something that we will continue to follow. And we want to be clear again that these are allegations in this lawsuit. These are simply claims that are all in these court documents.
Thank you so much for your time, Casey. We'll let you get ready for the shows.
Thanks, Anita.
Very interesting discussion there. There are so many things that become huge, become so popular, and then comes the regulation after so many people are touting them and using them for many different things. So as she said, we'll continue to follow up on this and let you know where things go with this lawsuit. Again, that so many have joined in on. It was filed on behalf of 40 named plaintiffs who bought cannabis in legal states, say they were not warned about the mental health risks. Give us 2 minutes, we'll be back. I'll set you up for where we're going in the second hour here on Chicago Live. Welcome back, everyone. Second hour here on Chicago Live, and we've got plenty of great conversations to come. Right around 2:45 here, we're going to talk with two local owners of a Harold's Chicken. Listen, if you know Chicago, you know Harold's Chicken and the cult-like following for Harold's Chicken. Sure, you know, some folks will say like Uncle Remus, although Harold's Chicken, though, is a staple. And so when you come to Chicago, if you're a visitor, it's like, I got to get over there. Got to at least try it out, check it off of your to-do list when you come here. And apparently there is a particular Harold's Chicken in our area that has been really getting some elite, some well-known, some celebrity following over the last few weeks. Some huge names that have been stopping in just to make sure they try some Harold's while they're here in town. So we're going to talk to the owners about the celebrity sightings that have been happening at their establishment coming up right around 2:45. Looking forward to that conversation. We don't have a lot of rain to talk about for our area in the next couple of days here, although it was pretty cloudy today. Look at that, you know? Pretty cloudy day out there, but not clouds that have produced rain for us. And so it will be very interesting to hear more about why we have water quality alerts going on. Usually you kind of see those like at beaches after you have some rain, and then all of a sudden there's a water quality alert. But we've got to dig into this warning from the Chicago Park District and the failure to meet federal water quality standards. So it's caused some folks to have to find a new beach to get to, and we'll jump into that conversation around 2:30. I'll tell you more about the things that are trending on our website at 2:15. But we're going to start our conversations here about the micro mobility transit that's really ballooning in our state, and for that matter across the country. And we're talking about e-bikes, scooters, and we were just having the conversation, you know, with Casey about things that balloon in popularity, and then comes the regulation. Well, this will follow that conversation quite nicely, because it's essentially the same thing. We have a new bill that was just approved to regulate e-bikes and scooters now. Dave Simmons, Executive Director for Ride Illinois, is joining me now so that we can talk about where things go from here. Thank you so much for your time. Great to see you again.
Yeah, likewise, Anita. Appreciate your attention to this topic.
Sure.
And an exciting day now that the legislation passed. So excited to dive into some of the details with you.
Exciting as in you are happy to see this happen.
We are, yeah. You know, at the core, Ride Illinois is a bicycle advocacy organization, which is usually pedal bikes and low-speed electric bikes. But the new devices that you just mentioned are becoming really popular, and so we see them as just other ways for people to get around. And to your point about regulation trailing, that's absolutely like 100%. A year ago, we would have been talking about e-bikes in calling everything an e-bike. Fast forward to today, the public is more aware of different devices. This legislation helps to clarify what the devices are. You know, there's still work to be done, but we as an organization are definitely pleased at the bill that passed through the House and Senate last night.
Yeah. What were some of the things that were really starting to become issue with more and more e-bikes and scooters on the roads?
You know, the main, I will state that the main issue that was trying to be addressed by municipal ordinances, and I believe we talked, a few months ago about how they varied so widely, right? So the main issue that was trying to be addressed was teen and preteen boys mostly riding these mini motorcycles that can go way too fast, for their safety, for the safety of others. and they would be conflated into the term e-bike. So a lot of the effort was to differentiate in public opinion and awareness, like between an e-bike and what became known as an e-moto. So that was the main focus. There is also children using electric scooters, some of which can go really fast. So through conversation over months and months and months, it was really a matter of getting everyone to the same page in terms of what the technology is, what the devices are, and then ultimately, who should be using them. And that's what this legislation, I think it's 65 pages, it aims to do. It is really clarify for law enforcement, clarify for the public, clarify for parents who maybe bought these devices not knowing, how fast they could go or how dangerous they might be. So a years long effort that culminated in the legislation that passed.
And so are we seeing when it comes to age requirements here that we're looking more so toward if you can drive an automobile, then you should be able to use one of these. But there had to be maybe more scrutiny on the fact that to begin with, anyone could maneuver these.
Yeah, and I'll start with that. I mean, there are some retailer manufacturer complicit. They're complicit in this. I don't know. I made up a new word, but this bill also aims to regulate and rein in kind of the false advertising or the misleading advertising. But you're right. Like one could go to either online or a lot of big box stores, even electronic stores, and they're selling these things that are just a really good deal, and people too good to pass up. So absolutely, the retailer responsibility is there. Remind me again your initial question. I confused myself there.
Oh, I was just asking. So are we looking at, all right, if you can drive a vehicle, then that's kind of the line?
Yeah, that absolutely came into play in discussion. When you look at motor vehicles, traditional cars and trucks, scooters, e-bikes, e-motos or motor-driven cycles is kind of what they become in the law. Aligning responsibility, the ability to maneuver and operate these devices, and having some consistency, across devices in a way. For example, reducing the age to ride a low-speed electric scooter from 18 to 16. And quite honestly, the conversation was, if we let a 16-year-old drive a car, they should be able to drive a scooter. So that was part of the, kind of the inside baseball conversation. And even when it comes to the classes of low-speed electric bikes, which was one of our priorities all along, was preserve what's in the state statute already, because it was effective. And essentially, nothing changed regarding low-speed electric bikes, but there is now a minimum age for class 1 and 2. And that being 15 years old, the thought being, 15 is when a teen is going to get their driver's permit. It makes sense that be a minimum age to allow them to use these devices that go faster than a regular pedal bike, but certainly not younger than 15. So having that consistency when it comes to whichever devices are being used, including automobiles, makes a lot of sense. And lastly, I'll mention the e-motos or the motor-driven cycles, these things that are not e-bikes. Like, I want to make that perfectly clear. These are not e-bikes. They are faster than e-bikes. They are stronger than e-bikes. Those will now require a license, registration, and insurance. They're much closer, quite honestly, to a motorcycle than a bicycle at times. And so requiring the license, insurance, registration to use those makes a lot of sense. While they are faster than bicycles, they can still serve a transportation purpose for people. So banning them was never really the main option. It was like, figure out what kind of regulations are needed and let people use them, but make sure they're using them safely and that they've been licensed to use them. So that was a big step. And I think this bill is something Illinois residents can be proud of. Is it perfect? No, but no bill really is. I think there will be some follow-ups, perhaps in the fall veto session, maybe next year, but it's a big step in the right direction. It does not go into effect until January 1st. So over the next several months, there is going to be public education and awareness efforts, and we'll keep seeing that that public knowledge of these devices and what can and shouldn't be used. It's just going to increase now over the rest of 2026. Kind of tee things up for early 2027 for things for the legislation to take effect.
Well, thank you so much. I know this is an area that you have so much passion and knowledge, and we certainly appreciate you sharing it with us today.
Yeah, appreciate your attention to it, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you again.
Right, thanks, Nina.
Again, that was Dave Simmons, the Executive Director for RIDE Illinois. As we were speaking, Chicago's Mayor, Brandon Johnson, began speaking at a press conference about home ownership. Let's listen in.
And more affordable and thriving neighborhoods. And through the $1.25 billion Housing and Economic Development Bond, my administration will continue to make investments in affordable housing, construction and preservation, and home buying assistance. And with the continued support of our partners, we will ensure that every family can access safe, affordable housing and the opportunity to build generational wealth in their own communities. I want to again thank the Resurrection Project, the NHS Chicago, for their leadership and partnership that made today possible. And thank you all again. But I also want to give a special thanks to Commissioner Castaneda and her entire team for their continued hard work and commitment of making the dream of home ownership a reality to all of Chicago. Thank you all again. And with that, please welcome Commissioner Castaneda.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I am so excited to be here with all of you for this incredible announcement. All across the country, housing costs have skyrocketed, and for many working-class families, home ownership is something that feels just impossible. The Homegrown Purchase Assistance Program is designed to bridge this gap for Chicagoans, so they too can have stability and build equity that can be passed down to future generations. I want to thank Mayor Brandon Johnson for his vision of housing for all that gave the department the space to make this program a reality. As Mayor Johnson mentioned, Homegrown will provide up to $70,000 in funds for down payment assistance and closing costs. Properties citywide will be eligible. Assistance is targeted by income and geography, with eligible properties set in 2 zones. Zone A includes areas where neighborhoods have experienced significant increases in home sale prices, and Zone B includes low-income census-tract areas. Eligible homebuyers must meet income and mortgage requirements, complete homebuyer education counseling, and contribute at least 1% of the original purchase price from personal funds. Grant funds may not exceed 25% of the property purchase price before any other down payment assistance is applied. And participating homeowners must also occupy the purchased home as their principal residence for a minimum of 5 years. We are proud to work with Neighborhood Lending Services and TRP Lending, 2 organizations with deep roots in the community. Their extensive experience connecting Chicagoans to housing opportunities will allow this program to be a success from day one. I am grateful to be in partnership with groups who share DOH's commitment to housing equity. No matter where Chicagoans are in their housing journey, this administration is working to ensure that they have quality, safe, and affordable homes. Under Mayor Johnson, we are investing in non-congregate shelters for residents experiencing homelessness, affordable housing developments for renters, home repair programs for homeowners, and now those who are looking to purchase a home have a new tool to make that a reality. Homegrown applications will go live in 1 week, and you can learn more about this program, what documentation applicants will need, and more at chicago.gov/homegrown. Thank you for being here as we celebrate this new chapter for Chicago. Before I turn the mic over, I want to thank my incredible staff, particularly Destiny, Steph, and Tamara. And with that, I would like to introduce the Vice President of Full Circle Homes, Kristen Kamara.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Castaneda, and thank you, Mayor Johnson, for your leadership on housing. I'm Kristen Kamara with the Resurrection Project and our lending affiliate, TRP Lending. I'm excited to be here today with the City of Chicago, the Department of Housing, and our partner, Neighborhood Housing Services, to announce the launch of the Homegrown Purchase Assistance Program. For 36 years, the Resurrection Project has been a powerful engine for social and economic change, rooted deeply in community. We are a single, unified movement dedicated to advancing immigrant and housing justice. Throughout our history, we've invested in people and communities to ensure immigrants and families have a stable place to live and the rights and protections necessary to thrive and build a secure future. Homeownership is one of the most important tools individuals and families have to build stability, create generational wealth, and contribute to safe, strong communities. Yet we know many families are priced out due to rising home prices and limited access to funds and resources for down payment assistance. Through Homegrown and the Resurrection Project's integrated housing model, which includes financial education, realty services, and lending support, we're expanding access and opportunity for new homeowners across Chicago. As a community development financial institution, or CDFI, we bring financial resources from home purchase and housing co-op loans to home improvement and purchase assistance grants. Our financial products, technical assistance, and coaching make homeownership more affordable for working families. The Homegrown grant can be used for down payment assistance and closing costs when purchasing a single-family home, condo, townhome, or 2-unit property in the city of Chicago, and it's forgiven over 5 years. It's one more resource we're very proud to offer. We're thrilled to be administering this resource for the City of Chicago. We see this as more than purchasing a home. It's about building community and championing housing justice for families, neighborhoods, and the future of this city. Applications for Homegrown will open to homebuyers on Monday, June 8th, and eligible homebuyers can apply online through the Resurrection Project's website. Thank you. And now I'll pass it to the President and CEO of NHS of Chicago, Anthony Simpkins.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner Castaneda, for making this resource available. Working families are the backbone of this great city, and we know that homeownership is a primary pathway to building both family and community wealth. Today, however, far too many working families in Chicago are ready for homeownership, but remain locked out by the upfront cost barriers that have accelerated in today's really challenging housing market. So the Homegrown program directly addresses that gap, creating a pathway for more residents to become homeowners, build equity, remain rooted in their communities, and participate in the long-term economic future of their neighborhoods. Through our lending affiliate, Neighborhood Lending Services, as well as our ancillary services, homebuyer education, financial counseling, real estate development, and real estate brokerage, we bring a panoply of services to support these aspiring homeowners. And NHS is proud to work with the City of Chicago to help ensure this vital resource is deployed effectively to reach the families and the communities that need it. So thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with Q&A. We have time for one question, one follow-up on Homegrown.
Are there anyone that has any questions about Homegrown? Maybe we should just ask that. All right. There are no questions for... How does this affect homes that are
Any home would be eligible as long as it is within the city of Chicago, 1 to 2 units, townhomes, condos. So if there is a vacant home and someone is looking to purchase that, this would be eligible for that. Correct. This would be for purchase price and for closing costs. And so we would apply it in that sense so that there would be more money available for things like rehab.
Thank you all very much.
All right, everyone. So we listened in there to a press conference about this new homegrown purchase assistant grant program that will be offered here in the city of Chicago. It's providing eligible Chicagoans up to $70,000 towards a down payment or the purchase of a home. Obviously, this is an effort to have a pathway, as they mentioned there, for more residents to become homeowners and to address this issue of affordable home ownership here in the city of Chicago. So it targets low and middle income working families, providing this new opportunity for them to get in on home ownership here in the city here. So it's a newly launched hub, and they're hoping, obviously, that this leads to more successful locally led housing programs, that this would be one of many to come here. Just kind of looking over this, again, $70,000. Primary objective here is for people to have new homes, or to enter into new home ownership opportunities here, again, through down payment and closing costs upwards of $70,000. So could be very helpful for people, especially if they are entering the market for their first time. It's 2:22 right now, and as we get ready for our next set of conversations here, we've been adding several just over the last few minutes that we're getting ready for. So yes, I mentioned earlier that we're going to talk about water quality alerts in our area. A very important conversation as we have more and more people who are getting out, and the temperature is kind of getting up there now. I think I saw like 88 for later this week. Well, you want to get in some water, can you? We'll talk about it. The water quality alerts for certain areas that are now getting warnings. We'll also, we've added in some guests as well that we'll be talking to momentarily. So yes, 2:30, 2:40, 2:50, there are guests who we've added in. We're going to talk with the Policy Institute. You were just hearing there about an effort here in the city of Chicago for more people to become homeowners. Well, what's been one of the biggest talkers for homeowners over the last year or more? It's just been a big talker over the last several cycles, but it's not a new talker here, and that would be property taxes. I mean, this can help get you in the home, but then they're staying in the home, and that's where this issue of property taxes comes in. And so we're going to talk about the budget for the city and for the state. The legislators were kind of going back and forth on things up until the wee hours of this morning. I think they stopped at like 4 a.m. And there were some things that got passed. Budget got passed. There was a lot left on the table as well. And so this issue of affordability, not just getting people in homes, and that's really important. Affordable housing is very important. It can change generations. So affordable housing is super important. But then there's staying in homes, and there's creating an environment where people can even assume that at some point in time they can become homeowners if everything else isn't so tight. So we'll talk a little bit about one, where the fees go, what fees are going to get hiked, what fees might get cut. We'll talk about the budget with the Illinois Policy Institute. That's coming up around 2:50. But again, we just want to take a little time there again for very important conversation that was being had, that press conference about homegrown assistance program, purchase assistance program, grant program here in the city of Chicago, where the median sale price, as of April at least, for a home in Chicago was $388,918. That is up more than 5% year over year. We've talked with someone in the business world who was talking about tomatoes going up, and the price of just about everything has gone up year over year. So the median price of homes in the city of Chicago, $388,918. So obviously that would be and feel out of reach to a lot of people, but possibly this financial assistance program could help a lot of people, eligible Chicagoans here. It looks like the mayor might be ready to take some questions. If so, we will listen in when he begins to answer some questions here, following up on that press conference again for the new program, giving eligible Chicagoans some financial assistance to get in new homes.
Second or so, if not. There we go. Okay, perhaps we can try to share the video for you. But thank you all. I mean, we'll let them continue to work on that. Well, thank you all again for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate you all being here. I do want to take a brief moment to speak to you all regarding our progress in Springfield and the measures that we fought to secure, which will make a difference in the lives of all of Chicagoans. We do want to thank the members of the Chicago delegation and the members of the General Assembly who have advocated for progressive revenue and continue to fight for the interests of Chicagoans. I'm proud to work with these members, and I'm proud of the work that we did, along with members of my office, local leaders from across the state, working with mayors all over the state of Illinois to ensure that the local governments continue to receive the important and committed funding that we need to keep our cities running. While we would like to see the local government distributed fund share restored to previous levels, by maintaining the current rate, we will be able to continue the provision of local services while providing relief for taxpayers in Chicago. I do want to thank all of our partners at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and the Illinois Municipal League for working with us to see these funds restored, and appreciate the governor's office and leadership for responding to the challenges that we face as local leaders. We saw the state followed our lead and institute a social media amusement and responsibility tax, a groundbreaking revenue source which we pioneered right here in Chicago. In the same vein, we are pleased that the state included a digital ad tax as one of the revenue measures in the final budget package. I have long called for this kind of progressive revenue, and I am heartened to see it move forward at the state level. As the economy continues to shift and digital media becomes more dominant, it is essential that the big tech corporations who have made untold billions through targeted advertising are part of the solution as we work to respond to the challenges our residents face on a daily basis. Additional progress was made closing corporate tax loopholes, which will raise much needed revenue without burdening working families. Although there is more work to be done, we're thankful for members of the legislature, particularly members of the progressive caucuses in both chambers and the budget leaders. Although they didn't prevail in every respect, this is meaningful progress in the fight that we have been leading to finally make the tax code work for working people. As leaders from across Illinois, we must continue to fight for full funding of vital public services while challenging the ultra-wealthy and the largest corporations to pay their fair share in taxes. That commitment to fiscal fairness and responsible governance also shapes how we approach major economic development opportunities, including long-term investments in major infrastructure projects. And then, of course, on the Bears Stadium proposal, many of you may recall that Chicago put forward a clear framework 2 years ago built on 3 pillars: public ownership, an existing sports authority with a dedicated revenue stream, and capital infrastructure backed by a completed traffic study. Those principles ultimately became the foundation for the broader legislative proposal that was considered as the only viable option by legislators. This was the only framework that was ever released for true public consideration. The mega projects bill was shelved due to legitimate concerns over a $1.5 billion property tax giveaway to a private entity and lack of clarity around the plan in Arlington Heights, which we are still awaiting. As noted, Chicago's plan is the only one that protects property taxpayers and avoids any new taxes on residents while driving meaningful investment of the museum campus and the future of the city of Chicago. We have been consistent with those principles from day one, and we remain committed to meaningful conversations with all stakeholders as we work to keep the Chicago Bears in Chicago. And with that, thank you again for being here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. One question, one follow-up. Marianne, want to get started?
Great. Hey, Mayor, thank you very much. So, of course, the people are asking where. Now you've got this second chance, or third, or fourth, or fifth chance. Where do you want to put the stadium, and how are you going to pay for it?
Well, I mean, listen, we've already answered how we're going to pay for it. I proposed that 2.5 years ago. The Bears were going to pay 75% of the cost to build the stadium. The other 22% of the stadium would be paid for by an existing structure, ISFA, the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority, which was established 40 years ago nearly by Mayor Harold Washington to build stadiums. It's a 2% hotel tax. So in other words, the stadium would be paid for by the Bears and visitors. As far as where the stadium belongs, I still believe the lakefront is the best location.
But where at the lakefront? Because it doesn't seem as if the Bears think that.
Well, again, the proposal 2 years ago was actually on that site, right? Again, the problem was we didn't have cooperation from Springfield. What is interesting, though, is the very frame in which we put forward 2 years ago alongside with the Bears, that's the framework that the legislature has used to create another option. The difference between ours, though, is that our proposal actually protects the taxpayers. It's not clear on whether or not what's been proposed by the legislature, if new taxes would actually have to emerge in order to move forward. And keep in mind, there is still no traffic study for Arlington Heights. There is still no plan there. The only viable plan for a publicly owned stadium, that was established 2 years ago in our initial framework, of which now the legislature has actually attempted to codify.
Do you mean, when you say the lakefront, do you mean the current Soldier Field location?
Yeah, if you go back and look at the proposal, it wasn't the current location, it was just to the south, if you recall. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
So this is a long, convoluted, years-long story. Who dropped the ball in this last legislative session? Why is this not done yet?
Why what isn't done?
How come the Bears haven't been able to make an actual decision, in your understanding?
Well, I mean, look, I'm only can speak for my responsibility in terms of putting forth a viable plan, of which we've done. You know, I can't speak to Springfield. What I can say, though, is I am still ready to have conversations with all of our stakeholders to keep the Bears right here in Chicago. Again, the only viable plan for a publicly owned stadium was the one that I presented. We have said from the very beginning, the proposal that we put forth was a proposal that the Bears would pay for 72, nearly 75% of a stadium that the people of Chicago would own. So it's good to know that, unfortunately, it took 2 years for the conversation in Springfield to get behind our proposal and plan for a publicly owned stadium. But keep in mind, that structure already exists with a current revenue stream. What's been proposed in Springfield, there is no clear indication on how revenue will be generated. And that's why I believe that you've already heard from surrounding mayors, not just the particular city that the Bears purchased their property in, that they have some real legitimate concerns around the fact that there is no traffic study after 3 years. And here we've had a viable plan for the last 2 years that we're just hoping at this point that we can have more substantive conversations with our stakeholders, the Bears, the General Assembly, the governor's office, to ensure that the only viable plan actually gets a fair shake at being delivered.
When the Bears released their statement today, they said that they were still looking at Arlington Heights and Hammond, but they didn't mention Chicago. Are they still talking to your city, to Chicago?
Well, look, my door is always open. As been reported, we were in conversations as recently as a month ago. I guess a month and a half ago now, it's June. But again, I just want to reiterate, there is no plan for Arlington Heights. There is no clear indication of how what has been proposed, though it did not pass, how revenue would actually be generated. What we have said from the very beginning, the only viable plan for the Bears was proposed by my administration along with the Bears 2 years ago. So any conversation other than what the plan actually entails, there could be some indication on why the process was so arduous there, where, again, the fact that they came to the conclusion that we already came to 2 years ago, I think is just further evidence that the most viable publicly owned stadium that the Bears would essentially pay 2/3 of the cost, and visitors, through a hotel tax that already exists, would pay for the remaining costs at the top tourist destination anywhere in the state of Illinois. This is an opportunity to make Chicago and the residents of Chicago whole, right? Because it's not a burden on property tax payers. And furthermore, we're talking about thousands of jobs that families on the west side, the south side of Chicago, southeast, northwest, throughout the city could benefit from. That is really the goal here, to create an economic opportunity along the lakefront that allows for that campus to be fully realized. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
Earlier this morning, the governor had this to say, asked about the Bear Stadium. You may recall that the mayor of Chicago held a big press conference with the Bears announcing a $2.5 billion stadium that he had no money to pay for, so somehow that was going to have to get paid for, and that's not something I was willing to do. What's your response to the governor there?
Could you hold your mic down? The echo.
Yeah, do you want me to say that again?
Hold it down some, yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Want me to repeat that?
Yes, that's a better sound.
You may recall that the mayor of Chicago held a big press conference with the Bears announcing a $2.5 billion stadium that he had no money to pay for, so somehow that was going to have to get paid for, and that's not something I was willing to do. That's what the governor said. What do you think about that?
Well, again, the $2.2 billion, I believe, is what the Bears had committed to paying for this stadium. That the cost for the remaining portion of the stadium is through ISFA. Again, that's the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority. It's a 2% tax on hotels that can only drive stadium development, right? So taxpayers would not be responsible for the construction of the stadium, right? Because again, the Bears were going to put forth 72% of the cost, and the other costs will be through an existing mechanism, which is ISFA. Interesting enough, that's the exact design that the Senate created, that municipalities would be able to create their own sports authority, right? But what it did not do was provide indication of how that particular local sports authority would be able to generate revenue. We already have one that exists. In fact, what was proposed by the Senate was essentially a 30 to 40 year ramp in terms of financing, of which we could already do that to take care of what the existing stadium is owed, while also ensuring that the Bears would be able to build their stadium. And keep in mind, ISPA is also available to help support. I know that the Chicago Stars are looking for a home. They're going to want to build a stadium in Chicago. And why wouldn't they, right? As women's sports begins to continue to grow, I think it's important around equity and parity that we provide support for all of our sports franchises. That's what this particular mechanism is designed to do. It was created nearly 40 years ago for that. So there's clearly a structure that would allow for the stadium to be constructed. Now, as far as infrastructure, there was a commitment, from what I understand, at least what Arlington Heights was asking for, was $850 million for infrastructure, which personally I believe that number was woefully underappreciated, quite frankly. But it was still higher than what the museum campus needed. And the museum campus is the top tourist destination for the entire state of Illinois. So all of the investments that would have been made, particularly through infrastructure, the return on that investment, we're talking $8.1 billion in income tax that we would be able to generate as a result of the 24,000 jobs, I believe, for Chicago, 43,000 jobs roughly for the entire region. There is no economic perspective that has ever been delivered for the Bears or a campus for infrastructure other than what we have proposed.
What is your message to the Bears? They've seen government in Illinois and in Chicago not yet create a deal and really struggle to over the last couple of years that they can agree to. So what's your message to them?
Well, look, I still believe that it's going to take all of us to get something of this magnitude done. And look, I'll be the first to admit, I was the only person in the race at the time that made a commitment to working with the Bears. And I'm still committed to working with the Bears. I'm also still committed to working with Springfield, right? You just saw what we were able to accomplish. Though there's still more work to be done, we're moving in a better cohesive direction around what it's going to take to support working people. I would have much preferred to have the conversation around the General Assembly and this session to be dominated by raising revenue. What we did see, though, was roughly $800 million, I believe, raised in revenue by taxing corporations. So you can see the progress, right? And though it has been slow, I have long been a proponent of challenging these big corporations to pay their fair share in taxes. The point being, you've seen how we came together to push the agenda forward around progressive revenue, though there's more work to be done. You've seen how we have come together to build a one-system shelter system in Chicago. We've come together around the southeast side development there. So there are clear examples of our ability to work together. And so my message is straightforward and clear. Let's all come together to make sure that the economic engine of the state of Illinois, and quite frankly the entire region, has all the tools that it needs to ensure that whether it's the Bears or any other larger development, that the west side, the south side, and all sides of Chicago can benefit from these developments. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
The Bears could announce tomorrow that they're going to Hammond, Indiana. And if they do, whose fault would that be? Do you bear some share of blame if that's what the Bears decide to do?
Well, look, I'm not someone who points the finger at the individuals. I don't believe that's productive. Again, I can't predict what the Bears will do. What I'm simply saying is there's no plan for Hammond. Right, we have not even done an environmental study there as far as I know. There's no plan for Arlington Heights. There's only one plan that's on the table. What I'm simply saying is if the General Assembly at least understood that they had to move on a framework, that literally mimics the framework that I've already put forward, then let's come together and figure out where there may be some disconnect or perhaps greater understanding. But again, at this point, to point the finger at any one entity, again, I wouldn't find that to be a good use of my energy, and I would find it to be counterintuitive to what we're trying to build here, and that's a cohesive approach to build the safest, most affordable big city in America.
How much money do you think the city can raise from the digital ad tax that the city council now has the authority to impose?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it really depends on, which big corporate conglomerates we consider taxing at what rate. When I was a Cook County commissioner, we explored and looked at what it could mean for the entire state. And, we've seen some conservative numbers range from, it depends again on what size of the corporation and at what rate. But I will say that I'm obviously going to work with members of city council and community partners as a whole to come up with what is fair. The fact that, again, that the state of Illinois followed our lead around the social media amusement responsibility tax. We've called repeatedly to protect the local government distributive fund. We've called for a digital ad tax. The fact that we are finally here, that's obviously a step in the right direction.
The budget doesn't include the authority for the city council to tax payrolls of big companies or to impose a per delivery tax on non-grocery or medicine delivery. How disappointed are you that those requests were not in the budget, and how much more difficult does that make this city's budget?
Yeah, well, look, I would, would be remiss if I did not, acknowledge the hard work that has gone into moving us in a stronger direction to generate revenue, and not off the backs of working people. As far as frustration is concerned, I think there's probably shared frustration around all of the work that we've done, because there's a real urgent season that we're in where people are struggling every day to make ends meet. And so ways in which we can alleviate the tension on people's pocketbook, especially at a time in which Trump's administration has brought us a recession, inflation, and endless wars. And so it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to work together to find, again, revenue, and to have a pathway once that revenue has been created to ensure that we're maximizing the benefits so that we can support working people.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I saw you on, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better,
right.
yeah.
You're on with Al Sharpton last night talking about your recent trip to Italy.
Yeah.
And you said that Pope Leo asked you how Chicago was standing up to Trump's terror. Did he really ask you that?
He asked specifically how Chicago was doing. He was incredibly concerned about midweight blitz. He brought it up specifically. We got into the conversation around, how, whether it was through executive orders that I signed to protect Chicago. He was very curious about those executive orders. I talked about our rapid response teams, particularly how community has shown up to help families get from their homes to schools. We talked about the fact that local businesses, whether it's Little Village or Pilsen or Chinatown, have been impacted by Trump's terror and his tyranny. Some of these businesses, we're talking about a loss of 70% of revenue. Look, there's no secret of how much damage the Trump administration has caused throughout the entire globe, right? And we felt that same energy in Italy when I talked to the mayor of Rome, where this attack on people who are, quote, other, end quote, is a problem. And when he asked about Chicago, he was very concerned and clear about how Chicago and other cities have been impacted by Trump's terror and his tyranny.
Okay, one more question about community violence interrupters. We all know what happened with the mob actions, teen takeovers at Hyde Park. How would you rate their performance, and what did they do wrong?
Well, look, our goal is to keep people safe, right? And any act of violence, one act of violence is one too many, right? I'll constantly be the first to speak directly to the idea that we have to do more, right? That work doesn't stop because we had 0 homicides during the Memorial Day weekend. But the fact of the matter is we did lose a life to gun violence. A 2-year-old got their hands on a weapon and shot themselves, right? I mean, shot themselves. So we're not patting ourselves on the back. In terms of how we do our work, the vast majority of these trends and gatherings, we intercept and prevent. The challenge, of course, is it only takes one. And the number of arrests that we've made, the work that we are doing to redirect people into safer interactions, right? The application process just closed for jobs. We have opened up park spaces to give young people alternative destinations. And I'm going to continue to make this plea with the people of Chicago that parents and adults, we all have to come together. CVI, business, the faith community, government, we all have to come together to make sure that we're keeping people safe. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
On that 2024...
How was your trip?
I got back safely and smoothly. Italy's beautiful, but it's no Chicago City Hall, you know.
That's what I'm talking about. Good answer.
Have you gotten any indication from your allies in Springfield on what needs to change about the 2024 proposal in order to make that viable at the state level, and what changes are you willing to make?
Well, look, I said I'm open to those conversations, and we have never had literally a more substantive conversation around this, but we did talk about our framework. Look, they didn't just pull that framework out of thin air, right? They received that framework from our proposal. So there is clear indication that they recognize what we have been saying for 2 years: public benefit, public use, infrastructure, as well as ISFA. And so the fact that they created a framework that is literally designed around our initial proposal, I'm just going to draw this conclusion that they at least respect my proposal.
You said your team last spoke to the Bears a month and a half ago. Are there any plans to meet with Bears leadership on the books going forward? And should there be a special session to take up a Bears bill?
Well, I mean, look, if there's a special session, we should be talking about how we can protect taxpayers and working people, right? But again, that's not my jurisdiction. That's not my call to make. That's something that can only come from the governor as well as the legislature. As far as the other part of your question, if I think if I can recall it, to meet with the Bears. Look, as I said, I'm prepared and willing to meet with all the stakeholders, the Bears certainly, and the governor's office, as well as the legislature. I believe it's going to be imperative that even all of the museum campus leaders, those presidents and CEOs, all of us, I believe, have to come together, because something of this magnitude, it's going to require all of us, right? I mean, the lift on this assignment, we can't do this by ourselves, right? And so I'm going to just remain consistent and steady that public benefit and public use, infrastructure for the top tourist destination for the entire state of Illinois. And then, of course, we have a funding mechanism that already exists that could generate the resources, not just for the Bears, but for other sports teams who also are looking at building sports and entertainment centers that can generate revenue.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor.
I'm sorry you have to peek around Jake's head.
That's okay. He's behind the tallest person here. So, this conversation has been going on for a while now. And
which one?
The one about the Bears.
Okay,
and so, 6 weeks, is that the longest gap that you have seen, the longest amount of radio silence from the Bears conversation?
Well, I mean, look, what we did hear from the Bears is that the mega projects bill, no one liked it. No one. The Bears did not support it. The governor didn't support it. Clearly, the Senate did not support it. So we were at least clear that the mega projects bill just was a non-starter. What we did see as a sign is that, again, the framework that the Senate put together is literally the framework that we presented 2 years ago. So, look, I'm just going to remain steady and open to conversations, because this is something that I believe that we can do well and we can do it right, but most importantly, we can do it together.
What's their sticking point?
Who's sticking
The
point?
Bears.
So I'm glad you asked that. I think I know why you're asking that, because we never heard their sticking point. So I believe it's a great question to ask. I just know that what the Bears preferred 2 years ago was literally the framework that the Senate drafted. Again, the biggest difference, however, it's still not clear on how revenue would be generated within a local municipality's sports authority, right? And how do you do that and protect taxpayers? That's why I have the only viable plan that protects property taxpayers. And, I'm going to just, again, remain consistent and steady that the Chicago Bears belong in Chicago, and clearly there's no plan anywhere else. And I'm going to just, again, call upon all the stakeholders to figure out how we can all come together to solve this. Because, look, this is good practice for us. We're going to need to continue to solve problems for working people, not just today, but in the coming months and years. We have not even experienced the full impact of Trump's tariffs and his illegal tariffs and the cuts that he has made to Medicaid and education and housing. These are real severe times for working people, and that's why I'm working overtime to build the safest, most affordable big city in America.
Hi, Mayor. I'm going to give you a break from the Bears and take you back to immigration, if it's okay.
All right.
Elio Montenegro. I'm with WVON Radio and WRLL. Last Friday, officials, agents from Hennepin County up in Minnesota went to Texas and arrested an ICE agent. They charged him with several felonies and misdemeanors. Is your office working with the state's attorney's office here to put together investigations, ultimately charges against agents who have crossed the line and violated the law here in Chicago and in Illinois?
Well, first of all, we've seen how agents have crossed the line and have been incredibly disruptive and deadly, right? There are clear examples there. That's why I put forth the initial executive order to ensure that our police department captures and maintains any evidence that could be used to prosecute these federal agents. There's a coalition of district attorneys and state's attorneys around the country who are committed to bringing justice on behalf of the people of our country. And so this is a clear example that it's possible. And of course, I'm going to continue to work with all of our law enforcement partners to ensure that we hold these rogue agents accountable. If you break down and violate trust between law enforcement and community, it erodes the progress that we are making. And that's why it's incredibly disappointing, quite frankly, that the President of the United States of America has withdrawn resources from community violence intervention and prevention. He has withdrawn resources from ATF, right? And so I just believe that there is a pathway and a clear direction to hold these rogue agents accountable, and I will continue to work with the state's attorney and all law enforcement to ensure that accountability becomes the prevailing form of governance. All right, thank you all very much. Thank you.
All right, we listen in there to what was kind of an impromptu part two to the press conference. Initially, this press conference was called to talk about the new homegrown purchase assistance program for people to get up to $70,000 in grants for down payments and closing costs here in the city of Chicago, a pathway to home ownership for people here in the city of Chicago. That program starts on June 8th. The mayor left and came back for part two. It was interesting that when they opened up the floor for questions about the home ownership assistance program, the homegrown purchase assistance program, there were no questions initially. And I think that was because they realized there were a lot of questions, maybe just not about the program so much. The details for the program are out there, and they talked through many of them. But people want to know about, one, the budget, and two, specifically this mega projects bill that did not pass in the wee hours of the morning. You know, you've heard us in every level of the day, every day part, talk about the mega projects bill over the last 2 months. And the legislators were down in Springfield until 4 this morning and failed to pass that bill. And so everyone's getting questions on that particular part of this spring legislative session today. And so the mayor talked about, first and foremost, the budget aspect of things down in Springfield. He said that the city of Chicago will be able to continue the services provided on a regular basis, as well as looking to provide relief to people in the area that feel as though there are many constraints on your budgets right now. He talked about what he feels is progressive revenue that was held up in Springfield, and also closing corporate tax loopholes was something that he spoke of specifically. Also, the max, he said, the max tax code works. These were his words. The max tax code works for working people, and that wealthy need to pay their fair share. That is a progressive line that you have heard many times over from Mayor Johnson, as well as many others who hold still to the progressive part of the Democratic Party. But when it came to the Bears bill, or the mega projects bill, more formally, there was the full mega projects bill that made it out of the House and made it over into the Senate, and it was very clear that that was not going to pass. And so then a new Senate bill was kind of trying to pare things down and see if that could get through, at least to help the Bears, and not all corporate entities that could come in the future. So not all mega projects, but just deal specifically with the Bears, making sure that the Bears don't go to Indiana. And to put it very bluntly, this was their whole goal, was that they would have something to work with, that the Bears already have Indiana's proposal in hand, and that they would have something in hand from the Illinois legislators. And so it's interesting that Mayor Johnson is still holding fast that Chicago is an option. In fact, if you were listening to him there, he feels like there's kind of new steam, if you will, now that that bill did not pass. He also admitted there's no plan on the books necessarily right now for like a set meeting with the Bears. Front office, but he talked about the fact that the framework that he cleared 2 years ago is essentially what, in going through all of the mega projects bill, paring that down, that the framework that he put together 2 years ago for the city of Chicago still holds firm as the only, his words, the only viable plan. That he feels like the mega projects bill was a tax giveaway for corporate entities that could come for many years, that Chicago's only, that Chicago is the only one that protects taxpayers and invests in the future of Chicago. And so we've been calling in more voices into this discussion here, because as you're looking at this major decision on the table for the Bears, he says for the city of Chicago that it would be the Bears paying 70 to 75%, and then the stadium, so that would be paid for by the Bears, and then visitors with the hotel tax that's already out there would pay for the rest. He says there's no traffic study for Arlington Heights, which you've heard right here on our show. The suburban mayors have brought that up. There's no traffic study for Arlington Heights, and that affects several other northern suburbs. He says there's no clear plan on how revenue would be generated in the years to come. And so he feels like Chicago is still the only viable option, that there is no full plan for Hammond, and we've talked about this, that the land itself that they are looking at in Hammond seems to possibly be problematic. And then there's Arlington Heights and no traffic study. So if there's one place, as we sit here now on June 1st with no mega projects bill, and the Bears saying we want 2 viable plans in our hands. Indiana's already there. Where are you, Illinois? But they have already issued a statement saying, look, we're still on our timeline. late spring, early summer to make a decision, but they want two things in hand. There's one place that knows about having those tough decisions and the team making the decision to leave. That would be Kansas City, Missouri, to be specific, because Kansas picked up where they left off. And we have Blair Kirchhoff, one of the chief beat writers for the Kansas City Star, who is joining us right now to talk a little bit about this stadium debate and how it played out for their area and for their team. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was just a few months ago that we're having the same conversations here that you're having in Illinois and Indiana.
Is it giving you PTSD?
A little bit, yes. Very familiar arguments.
And what do you think Missouri didn't get right that allowed Kansas to pick up?
You know, ultimately, what made a difference was Kansas made an offer the Chiefs couldn't refuse, the state of Kansas. Now, in the end, what's going to happen here is the state of Kansas is going to pick up about 60% of the $3.2 billion that it's going to take to build a new stadium and a practice facility and the entertainment district around the stadium. And the Chiefs and other private investment will pay for about 40% of it. So that was a deal that Missouri couldn't get to, the percentages. Kansas did get to that. So the Chiefs decided that starting in the 2031 football season, when the lease expires at Arrowhead Stadium for the Chiefs, that they'll pack up and cross over the state line and begin their existence in Kansas.
What kind of midnight conversations do you think led to that? And when I say that, I mean, you know, people really thought that Sunday night there would be something, maybe not the original mega projects bill, but something would have passed. And the legislators here in the state of Illinois were up till 4 a.m. trying to hammer this out and did not have the votes on either side. So how did it come down to the wire like that for you all?
It did. And look, it was a competition really that had endured for a few years. In 2024, the voters of Jackson County, Missouri, which is where the Chiefs Stadium exists, voted down a proposal to extend a sales tax that would have continued to fund improvements and renovation at Arrowhead Stadium. That was sort of the original intent, not to build a new stadium, but to really spruce up Arrowhead and modernize it. And it had been about 25 years since anything had been done major to the stadium. That was the idea, but the voters turned that down in 2024. And at that point, the Chiefs went looking for a different deal. And while Missouri continued to be a suitor for the Chiefs and try to come up with its own tax formulas and other ideas that would keep the Chiefs in Kansas City, Missouri, specifically at Arrowhead. There was no other place on the Missouri side of the state line the Chiefs were seeking. It was always going to be at Arrowhead. Meanwhile, the politicos on the Kansas side saw this as a great opportunity and started their game plan to get the Chiefs to cross over the state line. And part of that was coming up with basically an incredible deal for paying for the stadium. Essentially, they're going to pay for the stadium, and the Chiefs could not. The Hunt family, which owns the Kansas City Chiefs, could not turn down that offer.
So when those conversations were being had, I'd ask you, we watched as the Indiana legislators came together bipartisan effort. Like, hey, you know what, we may not agree on 90% of things, but today we're going to get together and we are going to make this happen. I mean, honestly, it was a beautiful thing to watch the legislators there in Indiana come together and put together the bill that's on the table there. But shortly after, there were the questions of, okay, what does this mean for people who live in Indiana, a state that many people regularly talk about having a better tax environment, essentially, than Illinois? Do they become more like Illinois now because of if they were to get the Bears, would taxes go up there and equate to essentially living here? What became of the conversation in terms of what the taxpayers would pick up then for them to move to Kansas?
First of all, it's a great point about how sports is the ultimate unifier. Republicans and Democrats seem to agree on the teams that they pull for. And we saw that play out in the effort that Kansas used to attract the Chiefs and Missouri used to try to retain the Chiefs. But you're right. Missouri and Kansas are different states when it comes to taxes, and there are and just as their teams are unifying spirits for their regions, also across political lines are criticisms of the tax plan that it took in Kansas to attract the Chiefs. There are many people on both sides of the aisle that aren't happy that the taxpayers are going to be burdened with almost a $2 billion price tag for the stadium. And keep in mind, this is a tax that they did not vote for in 2026 when this occurred. This was these are Kansas establishing bonds that are going to be. It's called the sales tax and revenue bonds. So $2 billion in bonds have to be raised to pay off the new stadium. And what irks, in many cases, the detractors was the citizens did not get to vote for, and people in Kansas didn't get to vote for whether they wanted the Chiefs or not, or vote for how they wanted their taxes to be spent. Did they want a pro football team in their state? They wanted a chance to vote for it, and that did not happen.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the fans post-mortem, if you will. One, are you hearing a sentiment of the fact that people in Missouri feel like they dodged a bullet from that standpoint?
On the contrary, I think that they're hurt. When the decision was made for the Chiefs that they were going to move over to Kansas, there was a lot of hurt on the Missouri side. The Chiefs, since relocating from Dallas, Texas in 1963, had always resided in Kansas. Then they were in a downtown stadium for a few years until Arrowhead was built and moved in 1972. And this seemingly for Chiefs fans was the forever home of the Chiefs. There was no way they would leave Missouri and Arrowhead, and the Chiefs officials were calling the stadium iconic, and it existed on a level with Lambeau Field and Soldier Field and some of the iconic stadiums in the NFL. And and the argument is, if it's so iconic, how can you leave it? And so I think it was a very, and still is to this day, months later, an emotional issue. There's time, right? There's still several more seasons to play before the move actually happens. And the closer we get to it, the closer we get to 2030, which would be the last Chiefs season at Arrowhead, in 2031, the first year over on the Kansas side, I think the emotions will be running really high then.
And I wonder, has there been one of the big things I think in the conversation here, you even heard it in the end of the press conference there with the mayor, is like, who ultimately takes the blame if they should move, the Bears should move from Illinois over to Indiana? Who ultimately kind of gets left holding that hot potato of blame for being the mayor, the governor, the state legislators who allowed this to happen under their watch?
Well, you're right. And in the immediate aftermath, which actually this happened in December, the decision was made in December. The mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, did take accepted some bruises for this. His name is Quentin Lucas, and yes, he was he was dragged through the mud a little bit when the decision was made. The Missouri governor also was. His name is Mike Kehoe, Republican governor, and he did not come out of this looking great either. But what happened, and this is unique to Kansas City. The Chiefs' Arrowhead Stadium exists in the same sports complex as the Major League Baseball team's Kansas City Royals. Mm-hmm. So they share parking and they share the area in Jackson County. So once Kansas City lost the Chiefs to Kansas, it became the Royals' lease is up at the same time as the Chiefs. It became imperative for Kansas City, Missouri to retain the Royals. And so that's what happened. They came up with a financial deal that the Royals were looking all over the metro area, including sites in Kansas. But when it was all said and done, the Royals decided to stay in Missouri, relocate from their current area to what will a stadium that will be built in downtown Kansas City, and that allowed the political figures, Mayor Quentin Lucas, the governor Mike Kehoe, and others politicians to claim a victory, and it is a victory for the Royals to stay in Kansas City. They're going to lose the Chiefs. They kept the Royals, so not as bad as it could have been. But again, there are some Chiefs fans that are very unhappy about it.
Okay, very interesting. And then what happens to Arrowhead, excuse me.
That's a terrific question because of the cost it takes to demolish a stadium. They're still arguing over that. And there's something else to keep in mind. So the World Cup is in the U.S. and North America this summer, and games are being played at Arrowhead Stadium. There's 6 games scheduled for Arrowhead Stadium. And you'd think, okay, they'll play these games this year, and then the Chiefs will play, 4 more seasons, and that'll be it for Arrowhead Stadium. But in 2031, the Women's World Cup is expected to come to the United States, and Kansas City will want games at the Women's World Cup. And so there's discussions about delaying the demolition of Arrowhead so more international type events can be played in the early 2030s here in Kansas City.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, because we've already kind of started to mull over, and this is why I had Field in my head. Like, what happens to Soldier Field if the Bears were to move to Indiana or even to Arlington Heights? What becomes of Soldier Field? So we're watching you all and trying to learn a lot of lessons from you. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. I know you have to go, but this was a valuable conversation.
Thanks for having me on.
Take care. 3:18 right now. Boy, oh boy. I mean, I really thought today we'd be saying there's a deal. What is it? Is it enough that we'd be transitioning maybe into that part of the conversation? Is it enough? But we don't have a deal. And so we're kind of still on the wait and see portion. We have Brett Bugansky who's working on this story today. Obviously, one of the many questions becomes, will the Illinois legislature have a special session? I think that's probably one of the biggest questions now. Will they try to reconvene and actually work something out? But again, we have a whole new slew of things to think about given Mayor Brandon Johnson's comments today. It is about 3:20, everyone. We have had quite a last few hours here, and I mean that from the standpoint of Brett working on the Bears story Sunday late into Monday morning, and now us getting a few curveballs here at 3 in the afternoon. So we've had quite a last few hours here when it comes to the Bears bill. And let's take a quick break before we move on with our conversations here on the show. right, welcome back, everyone. It's about 3:25 right now, and let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are trending on our website for a few moments as we get ready to get our forecast for today. JD will be up here probably right around 3:30. So let's talk about a few things. We were just talking, of course, to a beat reporter from the Kansas City Star, and since we were in the Missouri Kansas conversation, that's where I'll start. These Missouri cuts, funding cuts, budget cuts for Dolly Parton's free book program. We have some information on our website about this. You know, the wonderful Dolly Parton, country singer, and it's like one of our national grandmas that we love so much. Missouri reportedly cutting its budget by $4 million for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library Literacy Program. The program sends free books each month to kids under the age of 5. The budget cuts mean the state can no longer accept new enrollees. I remember when this program first rolled out, people were so excited about it, but budget cuts are what they are, you know. Again, founded by legendary country singer Dolly Parton, and that wasn't enough to save it from budget cuts at the end of the day. Reportedly, again, they can no longer accept new children into the Imagination Library, that literacy program sending free books to kids under the age of 5. We have a little bit of the backstory here and some deeper reporting on what this was really doing in terms of changing lives over the last several years, and more information about the big picture here, which is Missouri's budget cuts. What's going on that they have to go this far to the Imagination Library, Dolly Parton, one of her signature programs. So we go by the numbers in terms of the difference that this will make and what comes next. That's all on our website, fox32chicago.com. Let me bring things back here to Illinois, though. As we said, the lawmakers were hammering out a lot of last-minute issues up until about 4 o'clock this morning. Yes, the mega projects bill, the Bears bill did not make it through. One thing that did, though, that's getting a lot of discussion today, is Illinois lawmakers approving statewide classroom cell phone bans. Okay, this is a big deal, and really it will go down as a huge win for Governor Pritzker, quite honestly, because this was one of the things he heavily championed. So these Illinois lawmakers approving Senate Bill 2427, requiring all school districts to adopt policies banning student cell phone use during class time, with limited exceptions for educational, medical, emergency, or individualized education plan purposes. We've heard so much on either side of this bill. Those who were very much so standing behind the governor and his efforts, but then those who asked a lot of questions about it as well. You know, in the environment that we're in, when very unfortunately, in those emergency situations, does that allow for kids to easily access a phone? How will the phones be stored during the day? I mean, is it that they can't bring them into the school? No. So where will they be stored during the day? Do they leave them in their lockers, or will there be like bins at the school, or pouches? I've been to a couple of concerts where you put your phone in a pouch and they kind of like they zip the pouch and hold it until the concert is over. Will it be something like that? We'll see. But under this bill, student phones must be stored in a secure and accessible location during class, and school boards must review the policy's effectiveness at least once every 3 years. So much changes in 3 years. So Governor J.B. Pritzker has advocated, as I was saying, for classroom cell phone restrictions. He said he spoke to many educators who talked about the fact that, you know, this even helps in terms of instruction time. The fact that kids get distracted with the phones, or bullying and things of that nature that come into play and really get exacerbated exacerbated when you have cell phones. And so, again, this will go down as a huge win for him, and we'll see where things go from here. Senate Bill 2427, though, passing out of both houses by Sunday. And then we have a couple of crime stories here on our website. The Bellwood shooting that we've been on since early this morning here. 2 people are dead, unfortunately, killed in the shooting early this morning in West Suburban Bellwood. Happened about 1:30 this morning in the 1100 block of 32nd Avenue. So you think about people waking up first thing this morning and you see, crime scene in your neighborhood. Nothing anyone wants to wake up to at any point in time, but starting off a new week, and this is how people in that neighborhood woke up to the Major Crimes Task Force in their neighborhood here, and 2 of their neighbors, a man and a woman, who had suffered very severe gunshot wounds and did not make it. So that information is all on our website for you, as well as men robbed at gunpoint in downtown Chicago, and anything that happens in downtown Chicago with how many people we have in downtown Chicago, especially this time of year with school out and more people visiting, always kind of trends up to the top here on our website. The 2 men robbed at gunpoint early this morning in Chicago's River North neighborhood. So that information is there for you as well to check out. Be aware, not to be scared, but to be aware of what's happening in our city. The last thing I'll point your attention to before we take a quick break and bring J.D. Rudd in is the death of longtime leader of Leak and Sons Funeral Homes, Spencer Leak Jr. Really took the city by shock, and it's one of those things where you just think about the fact that this was, he was 56 years old, so a relatively young man who has done so much in the city of Chicago. So many people have stories of his family, this business, over 90 years in business, and he taking the helm and, was very instrumental just in the last couple of months here with laying to rest civil rights leader, icon, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. The fact that we were just interviewing Spencer Leaks about the family dynamics between the Jacksons and the Leak family, and you just never know. You really just never know. And so our thoughts and prayers are most certainly with the Leak family. He leaves behind a wife, children, mother and father, brothers who were also helping with the business. It's been very shocking. Last few hours in being notified about his passing, and I don't believe that we have the information yet as to any services. I think everyone is still, again, absorbing the loss right now, but as we get that information in, I'm sure we're going to be passing that along as well. A family that has served so many other families in their time of need for 9 decades. So it is 3:32. Let's take a quick break, 2 minutes, everyone, and we're going to bring JD in and talk about our weather forecast for today and where we go from here. 3:35 on your Monday, and JD is back with us. How are you today?
I'm all right, Anita. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. We were just still in the break lamenting about the Bears, but
it doesn't get more Bears than this. It's the Bears.
Definitely, if we look outside today and the players are in OTAs or in some type of physical activity outside, they're probably huffing and puffing and sweating a little bit.
A little bit. It's not super warm today. The dew points are low, which is great. We've had the cloud cover. So overall, it's not a terrible day. I would argue that this is great weather for someone who is a runner, an exerciser, something like that, because it's not overly warm. For someone who's just casually strolling around, you're like, could we get it a little bit warmer? Could we do something? Or if at least the sun were out more. That would help. But it does feel like a cool way to start this brand new month of June, meteorological summer, and it doesn't quite feel that way in most cases.
In most cases. So what you mean is cooler by the lakefront?
As always, yeah. We got that easterly wind, so lakefront and our interior counties still a little bit on the cool side. You go far enough south and west, we're into the upper 70s and low 80s right now. That's almost great for this time of year. But lakefront areas struggling in the 60s. It's like, come on.
I was downstate this weekend, and I mean, it was toasty.
Yeah. I mean, the warm air is that close. If we didn't have the giant refrigerator, Lake Michigan, we'd all be in the warmth, but it's really regulating those temperatures.
Okay, so when I stepped out this morning and saw how cloudy it was, I'm like, JD didn't say it's going to rain. So what is this?
We had a little bit of rain. We talked about it last night during our news program, which was a bit abbreviated for weather because we were talking so much about the Bears. But we had this weak little front come through, and it did squeeze out, I believe, around 2/10 of an inch of rain. It's not a whole lot of rain, and a lot of it happened between about 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. or so in some cases, but we needed the moisture. It just would have been nice to get a little more of it, and now it's lingering cloud cover from all this, so it's stunting the temperatures. That northeast wind from the lake, that also holding us back a little bit. So it's problems from all different directions.
And then when you talk about problems from all different directions, yes, June 1st is meteorological start of summer, but also the start of the hurricane season.
Hurricane season officially begins. Yes, I know our partners over at Fox Weather, they have been amped up about this. They're ready to go. They've brought in experts because there are some beliefs out there this could be a very active hurricane season, not necessarily in terms of the number of storms, but the intensity of the storms that do develop because of the aforementioned strong El Nino, the super El Nino. There's some worry that that's going to amplify things during the upcoming hurricane season.
So, like you said, not the number. But the ones that do say become the named storms that they could be.
That's the worry. Now, again, this is all just a forecast. We don't know 100% what the atmosphere is going to throw out. And every year, the different agencies make their forecast predictions on the number of hurricanes. But this is one of the few years lately here where I see there's more of a push of don't worry about how many total, worry about the intensity of the ones that we do get and then where they do in fact hit once they develop. So a lot of things to cover on that ground too.
Very fascinating kind of ways to look at things. And for those of us who are here in the area, just kind of looking at things for us or for those further, what are we looking at?
I have called up, I believe, the overall big satellite and radar picture because I wanted to tell a few different stories with this. So I know it's a little bit hard to see it, but I wanted to encompass the entire United States here just to show you we've got some active patterns ongoing. Look at where those various low pressures are. One south of LA, one south of Denver, one south of St. Louis, then one east of Jacksonville. It's almost a little bit of a line. That's kind of the little subtropical jet that we get this time of year. We tend to see those storm systems. That subtropical jet kind of turns into the mid to upper level jet, eventually kind of cruises northward throughout the month. A long way of what I'm getting at here is June usually becomes an active severe weather season for us. So before too long, we'll start seeing that parade of storm systems work its way our direction. For the time being, it's all down to the south. The yellow boxes you see are active severe thunderstorm watches. So there's one in eastern Colorado. There's also one there from Arkansas to southern Missouri, portions of Mississippi, down through Alabama as well for those storm systems rolling through those areas. What you don't see is any rain or active severe weather across the West Coast, namely California, where
They
again,
need it.
they cannot get rain. They are still struggling. They are hurting. There was some beneficial rain over the weekend in parts of Florida. There's some daily showers popping up there. They could use more rain across the larger peninsula of Florida. They're not getting that. And then for us, we're just kind of stuck now. We had that little bit of rain early this morning, late last night. That's going to be about it for the next several days. The sun returns as we head into tomorrow, and it's just a quiet pattern for us.
You covered a lot of ground there.
That's the overall synopsis. So while we're on this, if I can, I'll jump over to the 7-day forecast just to show you it will get warmer. The sun comes back tomorrow, Anita, and then the 80s really roll in here. And then again, if I can bloviate a little bit longer on this one, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, looks like our upper level pattern that's blocked us from the rain in general for the past few weeks finally breaks down. I know the timing on this is not ideal. It's weekend rain, first weekend of June.
Move that to Tuesday, Wednesday,
I know.
Thursday.
If we could just reorder, I know. It's one of those deals. And I just talked about another meteorologist colleague of mine. We're getting more into that season where it's going to rain, it's going to storm. And what seems to always happen is it happens on the weekends. Always. Like you make these great weekend plans and
we want to be in patio season.
I know.
We want to be in rooftop season.
So not that I'm advocating, but let me just remind folks that most employers do hand you sick days and you can't cash those things out. So I think we have a few folks in the newsroom who are actually randomly sick today. It's funny how this works out. It's
Funny
June 1st.
how that works.
And people, I got the weird summer cold, boss. I can't come in today. But yeah, sunshine comes back tomorrow. We should see decent sunshine Wednesday, Thursday. Temperatures jump up as the wind goes back around to the south. And it could get hot Thursday, Friday. I mean, upper 80s. Some spots will be near 90 with the heat, with the humidity and a front dropping in. That's that chance for some rain. I think it's just showers late Friday night, scattered showers, thunderstorms Saturday. Sunday might be more of a cloudy day with some rain and some embedded thunder here and there, but I don't think it's a full-blown weekend washout. Still too early to nail down the exact timing, but that's the best window right now for storms.
Oh, man.
I know. But it's warming up.
We need it.
We do need it.
We need it. I always try to be thoughtful of our farmers and those who need it more than others.
I know my lawn's getting a little brown lately. I know some gardens are starting, the plants are getting a little bit wimpy out there, so we could use some moisture.
Do you think after this 76 there, that we're going to be locked in for the 80s?
I still believe we're going to have one little cool snap in June because I feel we always do, and it typically happens somewhere around the second to third week of the month. Like clockwork, like every year, there's at least 1 or 2 days where something happens, the wind goes back around to the north or northeast, we get that last little blow off of cool air from the lake, and it's chilly, and we all go, why?
Winter's last gasp.
Yes, before it finally is just warm, and it's a constant, strong southwest wind for the rest of the summer. So we got a long ways to go. We're going to get there. But we're in June now.
We are officially in June now.
It's summer season, baby.
All right. Thank you so much for coming up.
Thank you for letting me crash the party.
We appreciate it. And we'll see you on the news starting at 4.
I will be there.
Okay. All right. We're back in 2 minutes, everyone. Welcome back. It's 3:47 right now, and we have a special guest who's just joining us. We have the mayor of Hammond, Tom McDermott, back with us here on the show. How are you feeling, my friend? Are you feeling a little more hopeful today now that this Bears bill did not pass the Illinois legislature?
I feel more hopeful. That's true. Obviously we still have some work to do. I think over the next 30 days or so, Bears leadership is going to get together. Kevin Warren, George McCaskey, and the board of directors have a big decision to make. And right now there's only one offer on the table that could get them where they need to be, and that's from the state of Indiana. So yeah, it makes me optimistic, but this isn't done yet.
Not done, and I think all players are saying that. The Bears have said they're still on their initial time frame of late spring, early summer. But Mayor Johnson said Chicago is still in play. Do you think so?
No, I don't. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just they had 3.5 years in Illinois, and city of Chicago was the preferred destination, and they couldn't do it for the last 3.5 years. So after the deadline set by the Bears, suddenly Mayor Johnson has a plan. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to legislative leaders either, obviously.
So let me ask you this. If because this is one of the big questions today, whether the Illinois legislators will reconvene, if they'll have a special session. What would your thoughts be on them coming back together? Do you think that clearly if the Bears, they've had you all's offer in hand, if the Illinois legislature comes back to the table, do you think they're going to be able to hammer out something that competes?
From what I understand, I'm not an expert on how the Illinois legislature works, but from what I understand, if they convene a special session, they need even more votes to get this bill passed than they couldn't get yesterday. So I'm not sure whether that's feasible or not, to be honest, but I do know that the Bears have been doing this for 3.5 years, and I don't think they want to sit around for months more waiting. So I think the Bears are going to tell us in Hammond whether or not they're going to build the stadium within the next 30 days. And either we're going to be chosen and the Bears are going to build their next stadium in Hammond, Indiana, or we're not going to be chosen and the Bears are going to go back and deal with Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson and Arlington Heights on their own without Hammond at their side. So one way or another, I think Hammond's going to get the certainty we've been looking for within the next, hopefully, month.
There have been many questions, and even in the press conference in the 2:00 hour with Mayor Johnson, there are still questions about the land there in Hammond. You want to clear that up? There's questions about the viability, the feasibility of the land that they're looking at in Hammond, whether it has been tested, whether it can actually become the home of the Bears.
Well, first off, I want to point out that nobody knows where the stadium is going to be built outside of about a dozen people. I've seen the basics of where it's going to go, and I'm not going to talk about that right now because it's confidential. But I think there's a lot of people that assume they know what's happening, and they don't. And secondly, I do want to point out that the Wolf Lake area and the Lost Marsh Golf Course itself received an award from the United Nations for being good environmental stewards when the city of Hammond reclaimed that property and made it the Lost Marsh Golf Course. So the Bears know more about that property than anybody, though, because the Bears have spent millions of dollars analyzing that property over the last 6 months. And I dare say they know a lot more about that property than a lot of the bloggers and a lot of the reporters that are saying, derogatory things about the city of Hammond.
If they were to choose whatever site that they look at there in Hammond, how would that change the area?
It's going to look a lot more like Chicago and a lot less like Hammond. We're talking about an infusion of $5 or $6 billion into a city that's assessed value is a little bit over $4 billion. So this will be the defining development in the city of Hammond, and it's adjacent to the city of Chicago. It's going to have amenities like you're used to in the city of Chicago. The only difference is it's going to be right over the state line where the business climate is a lot cheaper than it is in the city of Chicago. So I personally think it's a great business decision for the Bears to do this. It gives them the great access to downtown Chicago. It gives people in downtown Chicago the great access to that site. And you get all the advantages of doing business in Indiana as opposed to doing business in Illinois.
You said the business climate is cheaper, and that it would look a lot more like Chicago. Now, listen, I love Chicago, but
I do too.
there's a question of what is that a good thing if it starts to look more like Chicago? Because would the business climate still remain cheaper?
Well, I mean, that's a great question that you're asking. I've been getting some pushback here in Hammond about taxes going up as a result of rising property values. And I try to point out that a rising property value is a good thing, but there are people on fixed incomes that are concerned that if their house value rises 20, 30%, that their property tax will rise proportionally, because we pay 1% of our property taxes here in Indiana. So I have been getting some pushback, usually from seniors on fixed incomes, and that's understandable. But it's hard to run a city without trying to raise the assessed value of the city. And we've managed to pull in a project that would dramatically raise the assessed value of our city. And that's really what my job is at the end of the day, is to bring in development to the state of Indiana and to the city of Hammond.
Is that what you say to the seniors that give you the pushback?
I mean, I've been doing this. I'm 23 years as mayor, and I've come to the conclusion that there's nothing I could do that's going to satisfy all 80,000 people that live in the city of Hammond. So sometimes, you just got to sort of chalk it up that, even the best projects are going to have probably 2/3 in support and 1/3 against. But that 1/3 is usually loud, and there's not a lot you could say to satisfy the people that don't agree with you. And in this case, they feel the way they do. I respect their feelings. I just, don't see the world the same way. And that's the beautiful thing about elections is I have an election next year, and if I'm making a mistake, the voters can teach me a lesson.
Very fair. We were speaking earlier in this hour with one of the reporters for the Kansas City Star, and he mentioned the fact that, there has been more people in Kansas now who are becoming a little bit more vocal about the fact that they would have liked to have a vote about the taxes before the taxes went up with them acquiring the Chiefs from Missouri. They would have liked to have a little bit more say. The taxpayers would have liked to have a little bit more say. What do you say about that?
Well, I'm sure, and just like I'm dealing with over here, I'm sure that same 1/3 is over there in Kansas, and they probably don't agree with what their leaders did, but hopefully it works out for the leaders that made that decision. I strongly feel if you took a poll of Hammond residents right now and asked them how I felt about this deal, you'd have 75% of Hammond residents that are excited about this deal. But the one quarter can't be ignored. They're out there, and they're the ones that comment the most, is the ones that are against the project. But I think overall, Northwest Indiana is completely excited about this opportunity, and Hammond is ecstatic about this opportunity. So there are people out there that are concerned, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but I think the big majority by far supports what I'm doing and what the city of Hammond and what the state of Indiana is doing.
You said excited, ecstatic. So if you were giving a percentage on how you feel in terms of your likelihood to get the Bears to cross the state line right now, where would you be sitting as of today?
60%. I think that's a fair number. We're fighting nostalgia, we're fighting history, but we do have the only offer on the table. So I think we're in a good spot. It's not a done deal, but I am very proud of my state right now for putting this offer out there. I'm very proud of my team, and I hope the Bears make the right decision and move their operations and games to Hammond, Indiana, where they'll save a lot of money and will give a great fan experience.
We shall see. Hopefully very soon. Thank you so much.
Nice talking to you.
Great speaking with you again as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Give us 2 minutes, everyone. We'll be back to close out the show.
Man.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Appreciate you. Glad we got back to you.
Thanks for.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for staying with us today. Boy, what an interesting day it has been with more Bears development.
Stay tuned. I wonder if they'll do a countdown for the wedding, too. No, definitely not. They are. This is the top secret, nuclear secret of weddings. We will see you tomorrow.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
A rarity in the western suburb. 2 people turned up dead in this house overnight. Police found the door wide open. What else they noticed inside?
An Oak Park hospital that are